So this is part 2 of the video of my rant about GalaxyCon. But before I go into this, first of all, it's going to be a significantly different style. But second of all, I do want to make a preface on that I'm not here to say I'm against Comic-Cons in general. Comic-Cons can be a lot of fun. You can meet a lot of talent, meet a lot of people that have similar fan base. It can be a lot of fun. I'm not here to say completely do away with this stuff. It just needs to be properly looked to make sure that no one's doing anything stupid. But, okay, that out of the way, the question then becomes, if Comic-Cons are straight up not allowed to have volunteers, yet it happens all the time, why do they get away with it? There's multifaceted reason. For starters, at one time, all Comic-Cons were allowed to have volunteers because it started with a bunch of fans trying to get together to get an event going for other fans. Show by the fans for the fans. That was often a big phrase throughout a lot of conventions. And that is still the case, at least with San Diego Comic-Con. Absolutely. They're on the up and up. They can have volunteers. They are a nonprofit. And with that whole for the fans, by the fans, that is a nonprofit adventure by definition. And nonprofits absolutely can have volunteers. Now, they are not immune to employment laws, but they can have volunteers. For-profit businesses cannot. And when for-profit businesses often started taking over a lot of these conventions, it changed everything. It changed the rules that they had to abide by. Yet the people on the ground didn't necessarily know that. Both the staff for the convention as well as the volunteers didn't necessarily know the fact that now that you're under a for-profit venture, you can't have volunteers. But then the question then becomes, if you have all these people with their that you're inviting with for the talent, like Hayden Christensen, all this talent throughout the world sometimes, and all these people who again are getting effectively screwed, why does nobody speak up about it? Well, this is a working scenario, but there are a couple reasons I can think of. For starters, at least when it comes to the talent, a lot of them started by definition in the nonprofit world. That's how a lot of theaters are. The theaters are often nonprofit. Now, I don't know if they're supposed to be. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I just know that a lot of them are. And legally, they can have volunteers, and plenty of theaters have volunteers. So since these actors start in the nonprofit world, they're used to having these things for volunteers. So they don't necessarily think anything of conventions having volunteers, despite the fact that a lot of them are legally not allowed. And when any type of compensation, and I say compensation particularly if it's a gift card worth some value, is exchanged, you've got some problems. So, but again, the talent wouldn't necessarily think anything of it. And as for the workers, well, plenty of them just straight up don't know that this is not okay. They would have to have been exposed to the legal aspects and actively educated in them. And unless either they knowingly get screwed by, say, ADA, or they have some type of advocate with them that knows the law a lot better than pretty much anybody else, they're not going to necessarily put up a fight just because they were a volunteer and they ended up not getting paid when they weren't allowed to be a volunteer. Now the question is, why is that? Well, variety of reasons. First of all, while plenty of them probably did have jobs at one point, again, a lot of times these things just don't apply. Plenty of them are what we call neurodivergent. So when they get jobs, they are often done with some form of coaching. And that can be done through a variety of scenarios. Plenty of times it's through their school that they're at. Others, say like a Goodwill, or sometimes like a government agency, like say a BRS, or a or like a DEMIS scenario, like Bureau of Rehab Services, whatever's local. Department of Mental Health. There's a variety of scenarios. And plenty of them then have an advocate and a solid check on their employers to make sure they're not breaking the law. Because if they ended up into a bit of legal hot water, well, also the coach and whatever scenario they're working with, whether it's DEMIS, whether it's Bureau of Rehab, whoever it is, are also on the legal hook to an extent. So it becomes a solid check on the employer. A lot of these conventions just straight up do not have that scenario because it's a one weekend scenario. Why would anyone think to have some type of advocate on site to make sure things don't go haywire? Yeah. And because the advocate would be the one making sure that the employer is not breaking the law, the worker themselves wouldn't necessarily know whether the employer is breaking the law or not. How do I know all this? Well, for several years, that's pretty much what I did. I used to work in the nonprofit field. I used to have jobs at, again, for-profit ventures, but with coaching, and sometimes the employer wouldn't pay it. It would be done through the service that I was working, whether it's Bureau of Rehab Services or the school that I was working with at the time. Variety of scenarios. So, and furthermore, even if none of that applied to me, I'd still have to deal with the nonprofit world, because as a zoologist on my main channel, I kind of had to start an animal rescue. And animal rescue is nonprofit. It's either low pay or it is no pay. And that was pretty much me for several years. Now, to be fair, a lot of times towards like when I got like 23 or so, I did get paid in some form. But again, I didn't mind if it's not an official paycheck or whatnot. I had no problem just being 5 cents in bottle refunds. But again, that's just the nature of animal rescue. It's just the way it works. So again, I don't have so at the time, and that's just the way it always will, because you do it for the love of the animals. But that also applies to when I became an intern at North Carolina Fort Fisher. When I was an intern at the aquarium, again, the aquarium is nonprofit. So I'm used to being scenarios where they are truly volunteers. Now, to be fair, the aquarium did know the rules of employment law, and they knew what they could and could not get away with. But then again, so did a lot of the other places. Why? Because again, this is just the way the nonprofit world works. Sidebar boat note. While I was an intern at North Carolina Fort Fisher, I was also a state employee by definition. That's just how zoos and aquariums often work. It's a cultural scenario, but that's it. And sidebar boat note. But the individual volunteers don't always know that stuff. So when working a convention where it did actively start with a lot of volunteers, the newer generations of these workers don't necessarily know they're not allowed to have volunteers. I didn't find out about a lot of this stuff until that whole fiasco with Kineticon. Again, I caught them dead to rights on violations of the ADA, and then all this other stuff comes out because of that one complaint. And oftentimes it's how things at least start. When I became more educated about what they can and cannot do, I started to look differently at a lot of cons. But we can still change this all. Comic-Cons are still a lot of fun. It can be fun for a variety of reasons. This past GalaxyCon past weekend, again, this whole thing has started. Well, I was able to meet Catherine Sutherland of Power Rangers. Got a good video with her. KG Tang of Fate Stay Night and Apothecary Diaries did an awesome photo, basically recreating Shiro and Archer. And Max Middleton and Erica Limbeck of Your Lie in April. Got that photograph signed up. I'm gonna get more in due time. And also KG Tang signed the Fate Stay Night print that I'm working on. So it can be a lot of fun. All the stuff is posted in links. So, again, it can be fun. And we can change a lot of these scenarios to make sure that, again, it's still fun, but it's also legal. It's not a whole lot. I'm not asking to break the bank of these guys. Update their policies, make sure everything's working fine. Signing off. Oh, hi. Still here? The video's over. Well, if you're gonna stay here, the least you can do is get a like, subscribe, share this, maybe put a comment below, and then you can go on about your business, and I'll keep on swapping the deck.